So given that this is going to take longer, we also might as well start caching our sim. So let's put a output node here, which will also be green because this will also not be, actually I'll make it a light purple because it's related to our sim here. So what do we need? We need a DOP import fields, and the DOP network is of course the sim. We'll put the default object is, I forget what it's called, so I just do star flip star. That just means whatever the object was that had flip in the name, and that's apparently flip object 1, so we'll get it. And what do we want from it? We want the geometry, which is the default anyway. That's just the particles. We want the velocity field, and we want the surface. So let's go a couple of frames in. So we can see we've got some things. Middle click and hold, we can see it. We have surface velocity and obviously all the points. Really, the geometry, or rather the velocity, is being displayed as smoke right now, which doesn't really make any sense. So just say it's invisible. And the surface might as well be invisible also. The only thing we really care about seeing is the points themselves. And if you want to get that visualization back from before, you know, we'll just do that later. That blue to white thing, we'll just recreate that later. All I really want to do here is get the relevant data. We'll need velocity for motion blur, geometry to generate our surface, and this, we'll need this for compressing it. What do I mean by compressing it? There's literally a node called fluid compress. Fluid compress is something you should pretty much always do. Once again, we'll need our particle separation, so fly over here. What fluid compress does is it says you don't need all the particles and stuff that are not near the surface. So what it does is it deletes most of the particles. There we go. That are more than 4 voxels away from the surface. And it says that the surface volume will essentially is keeping track of that anyway, all that stuff below the surface. It's just the detail at the surface that we're ultimately going to care about. So this fluid compress, again, deletes a lot of particles, packs the rest of them into these little box containers that you can see here, so they can be loaded faster in render farm environments. And overall, it just makes it smaller. So just put that down in there. We'll be able to regenerate our data in the next chapter to create our meshes just fine. So always put the fluid compress down, make a file cache here. And I like to make my own path. $job, that's the project we set up. I'll put sim, because this is like our sim data, and I'll call it cool sim dot version 0 dot the current frame number, which is $f, dot bgeo, which is Houdini's file format, dot sc, which we tend to use for it's a streaming file format, but you don't have to be concerned with that. bgeo.sc. So there you go. So there's our file cache. Click load from disk now. Now obviously these files don't exist yet, we didn't make them, but as soon as we click save the disk, we will have them. So I'm going to say save it. Let me think if there's anything else that we need to do before we run the sim. Let's see. Looking at our thing here again. Anything else to fix here? I mean, it looks pretty good. The only thing I would say is depending on the scale we're going for, because again, this is 3 meters wide, so it's looking about right. But you know, if we feel that it's too grainy, maybe even. I mean, I'm not sure that it even is, but all these lots of little bits, and that's a pretty big splash, so it would do that. In any case, if you feel like things are too turbulent, things are moving too crazily, there's 2 options you have, 2 easy options, which is on here in volume motion, there's the notion of velocity transfer, which we talked about. That's the thing that stamps basically the velocities from being points into our velocity volumes and then back again. There's a splashy kernel, which is what we want. We have a splashy scene. You can go to swirly kernel, which will kind of calms things down a decent amount. You can also back just on the splashy kernel, this velocity smoothing. You know, when the points transfer their velocities to the volume grid, it then applies a smooth over all of that to kind of calm everything down a little bit. You can arbitrarily just do more. So this is now twice as much smoothing. So the velocities that we have here will just not, they will all kind of converge a little bit more, which makes it a little less noisy, which makes it a little less splashy. In a way, it's kind of like viscosity a little bit, where everything around a given point tends to move in the same direction. We're not going to talk about viscosity in this lesson, but in any case, you can increase this 0.2, 0.51. You can go over 1. You can do 2. You can just keep going, however much smoothing you want to do. Eventually, it'll stop looking like, a low viscosity liquid like water, though. So don't push it that high. Don't increase it at all if you don't think you need to. I'm going to say let's increase it a little bit. It'll give us something to compare against. At least that combined with the increased substeps, I think, will be nice. So that's just a little trick there. And that's it. I'm going to say let's do that. So back in the cache area here, save it, and then save to disk. This will probably take a little while, as you can imagine. So we'll look at this soon.